So in this section I want to introduce about the rod acetate. Now we've mentioned that the cones are the central vision for central vision and colour perception, but the rods actually make up more than 95% of the receptors in the retina of the eye and are responsible for dim vision, a combination between dim colours, and some of them are just contrasts and some of them are outlines. So we see our colour during the day superimposed upon the background of black and white. So it's like having a series of colour filters on top of a black and white television. So more than 95% of the receptors are actually rods. And one of the functions of that is the ability to see between light and dark. So everybody says, oh, it's to do with black and white vision. It's not black and white. It's contrast between black and white. So dim light particularly will bring us, because when the light begins to fade as the evening begins to come on, you lose the ability to see certain colours first of all, and then eventually everything remains just grey, and then eventually it's dark completely. So apart from the dim vision, we also have that for peripheral vision. So I don't, you know, my eyes are concentrating on where I'm looking. So I'm looking at Anna right now, but if Anthony, if you just wave your hand, no, not you, Anthony. So what I'm doing is I'm looking here, but when I'm looking and concentrating, I can see him. Okay, not clearly, but there's something happening in the peripheral vision here. Okay, so rods see peripheral vision. Okay, so they don't see the central vision, but they see the peripheral vision, and that can lead us to problems. And one of the problems that we often get with people is vertigo or balance problems. Okay, because you actually subconsciously or unconsciously rather see things that you're not consciously aware of. Where I'm looking at Anna, but something's happening over here. So all this information goes into the brain through the thalamus, even though we're not actually concentrating consciously on it. It's subconsciously and unconsciously it's still going in. So peripheral vision, and that's very important for balance. Okay, so many vertigo problems can be due to difficulty in just being able to see outlines and peripheral vision. So we use this test for people with vertigo problems, nocturnal, and the third one is the pupillary light reflex. So the pupillary light reflex is what shuts our pupil down when the light is bright, or that when we need to concentrate and be able to bring a book close to us. So in order to have our visual acuity and to tune in to the words there as we get closer and closer, the pupil has to get smaller and smaller. And what happens is, as we get older, in a lot of cases, is the pupil doesn't constrict enough. And that lack of constriction is a reflection of the visual pupillary light reflex. So it's not as strong as it should be as we get older. Okay? So the way we get round that is to increase the light. So when I got to about 40 or so, I found telephone numbers in telephone directories quite difficult. So you're tending to pull it away a bit, okay? And away a bit, and away a bit, and away a bit, until it gets so small you can't read it anyway. And that's when most people will go into wearing glasses, because they're long-sighted but can't see shut. But you know, sometimes I can't see very well those, especially in dim light. And we talk about, if you go to restaurants, they usually manage to dim the lights a bit, especially when the bill comes. And very difficult sometimes to see a 3 from an 8, especially when it involves something with service charge or gratuities and things. You know, you're not sure what you're signing, you just sign it. So I remember, probably 20 years ago now, talking to Dr. Goodhart. A few of us got hold of George one night socially, and we asked him, you know, that, you don't seem to wear glasses, George. And he said, no. He said he did a eulogy. His sister had passed on fairly recently at that time, and he said he read the eulogy from the text without glasses, and everybody at the end clearly didn't really listen to the eulogy. They were just amazed that George was able to read without glasses. And he said, Chris, there's a secret. He said, major secret. He said, how old are you? So I said, oh, I think it was 45 or something at the time. And he said, never wear glasses. He said, that's the first thing, is because once you start wearing glasses, your eyes weaken to it. And the next year or a few years on, you have to get stronger and stronger, and they get worse. He said, you know, try and use pinhole glasses to make the muscles stronger. He said, I've tried vitamin A, silver, all sorts of things. He said, but the secret is this, and he whipped this out of his top pocket, and he said, all people should carry a little torch, pen torch. So you get this out in the restaurant when you've got the menu there and the bill, and you notice that when you put a bright light on, you can read it. Okay? And I've noticed the same thing. If I take the newspaper outside in the sunny weather, I can read perfectly all right, no problems whatsoever. The optician will tell you, oh, you need glasses. But the reason for that is the lens has crystallized and it's gone hard. It doesn't adapt, it doesn't change anymore. How come it changes when I go outside then I can read all right? Because they want to sell you the glasses. But the real cause of visual problems as you get older is simply the reflex, the light reflex. So what is happening is when you put the bright light into the eye, and always bright light there, the pupil should constrict, okay? And then you find you can focus in. So what makes that constriction is the rods, because it's the rods that pick up the contrast of the dark and the light. So the first signs of getting problems is when the eyes can't focus in. This is an indication you're getting problems with your rods. Okay? So we need to think about things which will spice our rods up a bit. Okay? So the reason I want to choose you, if we could borrow you now, and what we'll do is we'll lay you down and Jill will do the muscle test. So in the packets of acetates, when you get some from over there when you buy them, inside there are 3 colours, and the 3 colours of what we've talked about, the red, green and blue. In there will be 3 other colours called complementary colours to those 3, which are, if you like, the good colours, which we'll talk about in another module. And then there's a black acetate, again, which we'll talk about in a different module. And there's the rod, or dim vision, that we use this for. So if you muscle test her first of all, so strong muscle is strong, and then you put that across the eyes, this says the rod. So what will happen is you put this across the eyes, and she holds it by the acetate on both hands. Very important she keeps her eyes open. What I do in my treatment room is I dim the lights at this stage. I just turn the lights out as well. In this case we can't because everything will go dark. But keep your eyes open and now do the muscle test again. So we're just decreasing her input. And we can see that she goes weak at this stage. Try the other leg, it should be pretty much bilateral. If you've got this issue, do not drive with her. Because she won't see what's coming in her peripheral. Remember the 3 things? Peripheral vision, visual writing reflex, a pupillary light reflex, okay, and balance, okay? So all those 3 things are operated by our rods. And this is, most of the people in this room did not put their hand up, but I more or less guarantee you'll get at least 1/3 of the people will weaken to this. Okay. So remembering what is the rods. So the rods are picking out dim vision, contrast there, and the chemical inside there is melanopsin, it's called. Remember that word. It's the melanin in there, but opsin is the pigment. And in the colour vision, it's called rhodopsin or iodopsin for the rods and the cones. Now, traditionally, what's been used to help this is bilberry. Bilberry is a wonderful anthocyanidin. Of the coloured pigments, of the 6 anthocyanidins, 5 of them are in bilberry, and the other one, pelargonidin, is in strawberries. So a mixture of bilberries. The cultivated form of bilberry is blueberry. It's not as good as the bilberry. The wild bilberry is the best. But a combination of strawberry and bilberry for breakfast is really very, very good for helping the eyes. But bilberry can be used as a supplement. It's a very, very dark violet colour, which is exactly the same colour as the rhodopsin in the back of the eye. Now, we have mentioned in another module, another chapter here, about colour vision using lutein and zeaxanthin, which is how I got into this in the first place. Now, lutein is a yellow pigment, and zeaxanthin is orange. So for rods, we tend to use more of the lutein, and for zeaxanthin, which is more the orange, is more for the cones. Okay, so you might want to make a note of that. Now, in nature, most of these are present in foods in both amounts, but depending upon the colour. So an orange pepper will have more zeaxanthin. A yellow pepper will have more lutein. So you should have yellow peppers and not so many of the orange peppers, all right? But the same thing would apply with lutein with Swiss chard, collard, and spinach are all good sources of lutein. But there's one vegetable which scores higher than all of these for both lutein and zeaxanthin, and that's kale. And people say, but Chris, kale is green. Haha. You leave kale in the fridge for a week, like I often do, and it goes yellow, and that's the lutein. So underneath the chlorophyll, which begins to oxidize off, that's the yellow pigment in there. So it's very rich in lutein, which is great blotting paper for peroxides in the eye. Wonderful there. So you should eat kale. All right? So kale is a very good source. Commercially, they produce lutein and zeaxanthin from marigolds or nasturtium flowers. Okay? Again, the yellow and the orange ones being predominant, which one is which. So remember, the majority, the heavy ones, should be the lutein, but the kale, a good serving of kale, has wonderful properties for both lutein and zeaxanthin. So those would be the main thing. Now, the other one is to actually get the retinal in the visual pigment up, which we need vitamin A. Now, vitamin A is a substance we get from particularly liver and butter, some dairy products have, but liver is a major source, and of course traditionally I used to get it from cod liver oil. And vitamin A we make as a nice product called Smart Vitamin A because it's in the base of black cumin seed oil, which enables the retinol palmitate, which is what you get from your food, to go into retinol, which is like the stored form of the vitamin A, to convert then, particularly with a little bit of zinc and B3, into retinal, which is the visual pigment, and then on to retinoic acid for skin disorders. So Smart A will be something you test. Sometimes people convert carotenoids in, which you would get from your green vegetables, but particularly the mixed ones like the orange and the yellow ones that you talked about, lutein, zeaxanthin, zinc, B3, magnesium, bilberry, and finally DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, which is one of the omega-3 oils, particularly present in fish oils and maybe applied separately, is the main component of the phospholipids in the retina of the eye. So you may find you get these omega-3 oils from plant oils, particularly for blue people, remember, like flax, pumpkin, and walnut. So those would be the things we test you for. Now, while I'm here, the subject of vertigo, so what we can do is to test three things when a person comes in with dizziness, vertigo, balance type of problems. The first one you must always do is the eyes, because that's what we look at, and if the eyes, peripheral vision is going, there's no point in going any further. So we always use the dim vision acetate. So that would be the first thing you do. The second thing, which is we will show you a little later on, is to test the ears for the labyrinths, and the third will be the neck for the cervical spinal structural input. So those are the three things. When a person has dizziness, start with the eyes, followed on by the labyrinths challenge, and then the cervical spine. Okay, thank you.